Hey everyone, it's Chad with CAB Creations. So today I'm going to be doing a neat little project that's going to be for those that are looking to do some gardening but want a little less involvement with things like watering and weed care. Obviously there's still a lot involved in it, but this simplifies the process quite a bit. This is going to be a modular 5-gallon bucket garden that doesn't look like a 5-gallon bucket garden. And it'll have an automated watering system built into it as well. So with that being said, let's get started. Hey guys, we got past the framing the shell and now we're moving on to plumbing. So I have a little menagerie of things here that are going to make this project happen. I'm using CPVC. You're welcome to use whatever type of plumbing material that makes the most sense for you. Maybe much like me, you have some stuff laying around. I happen to have a fair amount of little CPVC fittings that I needed to do something with. And it's all in 1/2 inch, and I'm not trying to do this on a large scale. I don't think you really need much. 1/4 inch is totally fine. So it's really up to you what you decide to use. But at the end of the video, I will definitely have something down in the comments giving a full list of materials that I use to build this project. So without further ado, we're moving on to the next phase. All right, now getting started, I'm going to try to get everything measured and dry fit to make sure that it all sits the way I'd like for it to before assembling it with glue. So first phase, we're going to go ahead and get everything mounted up. Well, to some degree. Now you don't have to do this. I'm only putting a couple of screws into this little T. It's a mountable T, but they're only facing one direction. So I'd like to have some on the back side to keep it from moving on me whenever I'm checking and gluing my pipe. Okay, let's see what we've got. So to my next T, I think we'll go roughly 17 inches. Sounds pretty good. So let's get our PVC cut. Now again, like I said, this entire project does not need to be 100% exact. And I apologize for the camera angle here. But you just need to be more or less close. Now, mind you, with other projects I do, things have to be far more precise. But for a garden bed and some rough plumbing, I don't see the need. I think this time we're going to go with roughly 19. All right. Now that we've got a very generic dry fit for our piping, starting here, going on out, we're going to need our stand-up portions to go to our hose barbs to feed the buckets. I think we'll go with roughly 4.5. So now we're using a 1/2 inch CPVC to 1/2 inch thread for our hose barbs. Now we're going to need a pipe coming out to the exterior of the unit in order to give us what we're going to need for our automatic watering device. So we can probably follow about the same measurement, being that we're maybe almost 2 inches back here. We're not going to need quite that much. That should give us what we need. If you'd like to take a look here, we've got all of our spouts coming up. I know you can't see the one behind this post, but it's very much like the other two you can. So now that we've got everything more or less in place, what I'd like to do now is get it all glued up and then add a couple of clamps to the pipe to keep it in place so that it's just not really moving around. So here we go. Now, I do suggest if you're doing this on your workbench, get a spare piece of plywood or something so as to keep the primer and glue off of your tabletop. Let's get this kind of in position there. Sometimes your pipe will want to try to push out on you a little bit as well, so you might want to kind of hold it for a second. All right, our primary branch here is completed, short of all of our end fittings. So now what I'd like to do is go ahead and start kind of securing it in place. I've got a handful of little CPVC straps that I want to put on here. So here we go. There we go. Now to put on our female receptacles for our hose barbs. I am paying attention to try to keep the primer and glue off of my gaskets here. Now we've got our primary assembly done for our feed line. So what I'd like to do next is get my hose barbs in place and go ahead and get a little PTFE on those to get a good seal, and that should take care of any kind of potential leaking and expansion over time. For the moment, I'm going to just get them in there hand tight, and I'll come back with a wrench. Sometimes when you're building something, you start to remember an easier way to do things. I know I do. If I did this project every day, I'd probably be amazing at it. But for what we're doing right here, right now, I'm getting it done. I just want to get these snug, no reason to go super tight. And there we have it. So this is the infrastructure to give us our water feeds to our buckets. Now, the next phase of this is going to be adding in the tubing and then preparing to do the exterior trim work on this. So we'll go ahead, and I got 10 feet here of vinyl hose. I'm going to split that up so as to give me a little bit of extra at each location. So I'm not necessarily fighting with the hose if I need to remove a bucket or something like that. Not to mention, it's kind of helpful. Being I've got 10 feet, I'm going to want to stay within 36 inches per unit, which is far more than will ever be needed. So we'll roughly go somewhere within that range. As I said before, there's no definitive way, I would say, to do this project. This is just what I've come up with, and obviously it's open to interpretation. Hopefully you come up with an even better way for yours. Now, it is generally a good idea to use a hose clamp here, but for the sake of not going overboard on, sure, they're only a couple bucks a piece at your local hardware store, this is going to be a pretty low pressure feed, and the barbs of the hose should do a pretty good job in retaining it. So I'm just using zip ties. Whatever you might have, as a matter of fact, you could even take a piece of wire, twist it around, and that would do just fine. The idea is just to ensure that the hose remains attached to the barb. Now I'm using a set of flush cutters to cut these zip ties because, well, tie wraps. After many years in the electronics integration industry, these little guys, when you cut them at an angle with something that won't remove the entirety of it, tends to hurt when it cuts your hand if you reach in there. So now we've got our plumbing more or less complete, and we're ready to move on to the next phase of adding the exterior shell to this and the trim. So let's move on. Now we've moved on to the phase where we're going to start putting the outer trim on this guy. So I'm using a narrow crown stapler. There's lots of different ways to do this. If you're not going that route, I could definitely suggest, if you don't happen to have a compressor and nail guns and things like that, you can always use a nice ribbed galvanized nail or something like that. Would totally work in this instance. But for the sake of speed and the fact that I do happen to have this little guy, I love it. I'm using 1 1/4 inch, and here we go. All right, everyone, now we're going to move to the last phase of this project where we're going to utilize some of the cutoffs from doing the exterior shell on our planter bed to make some trim for the corners, just to kind of dress it up a little bit. And obviously, to each their own on what kind of design you're looking for, how at the end of the day you want this project to look, and bearing in mind that here in let's say a couple of months after it gets a good opportunity to dry out, you can obviously paint it as well. I just wouldn't suggest doing that in the beginning, being it's treated lumber and it'll begin to rot from the inside out, being sealed in with that moisture. So with that being said, let's move on. All right, now for the final phase of this project, and if I can keep it all together, what we're going to do is get our buckets prepared to enter into the garden here and bring our hoses in for the watering. Mind you, obviously, I've kind of tried this out. I've never worked with this unit before, but it seems to be working pretty well. The only thing I would say is to keep your pipes at an even level. So here we go. Now what I'm doing is actually just punching some 1/2-inch holes in the bottom of the bucket. I'd prefer to actually put them both inside and outside to allow drainage, whether the bucket be concave or convex at the bottom. This is a good measure. So the next thing we're going to do here, and mind you, I had a little bit of trial and error in this process. This is not a automatic water system that I am familiar with, and I didn't want to spend a ton of time trying to figure it out in the background. But what I did find is if you happen to have any kind of scrap, sticks, just about anything, my suggestion is once your plants are in your buckets, you run this across the top with a couple of tie wraps. That'll give you a great little spot for your tube. Obviously, depending on where your plant's coming up in this bucket, you may have to adjust this a little bit, but for the purposes of the video and to verify that our assumptions are correct here, this is what we're going to do. Well, that was unexpected. Well, these weren't the best choice, but you get the point. Now, if we give her a spin, let's see how our water comes out of our tubes for our plants. Gonna go to manual mode here. Give it 1 minute of watering time. And check our hoses for any kinks to ensure that we're getting a good flow of water. We might have a little bit of a kink, and we do back here. Let's go ahead and reposition this. And as you can see, we've got a great flow of water on each tube. All right, everyone, we're back now with the buckets full of soil. Decided that in this particular garden, we wanted to do tomatoes. So I got a couple of varieties of tomatoes in here that we're looking to grow. The only modification I'd say that you're probably going to have to do along the plan of what I've been talking about here is attenuate, adjust the water flow for the particular crop or purpose that you're intending. In this instance, I doubled over the end of my hose to kind of seal it off and then poke some holes along the way to give me a little more of a misting. And I'm still not 100% happy with it. I'll probably play with it a little bit more. But at the end of the day, just to give you an idea, and that can be set to do up to every several hours or just once a day. It's totally up to you. Really, it just depends on what you need. Here it's pretty hot, so I think I'm going to be doing at least 3 times a day. Try to keep everything from drying out on me. But I definitely appreciate you stopping by to take a look at my video, and hope that you like, subscribe, share, send it to anybody you might know, and come back for the next one. I've got some other stuff coming up here pretty soon I think you might appreciate as well. But if you do enjoy the video and look forward to the next one, please, again, like, subscribe, share. In the meantime, hopefully you have good luck gardening with whatever it is you might be planting, and try to stay hydrated out there. It's definitely cooking. Would have had this video done a little bit sooner, but we had the July 4th weekend come up and had quite a few things going on in the meantime. But as I said, once you get this thing going, it'll mostly take care of itself. Other than that, I will say you probably might also want to put some plastic over here later, as I spoke about before. Keep the weeds out, keep the bugs down, keep the moisture in the soil. It's a great way to go. Thanks again, everyone.